Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this 10th episode of EKS Tells, we are going to explore EKS Connector. EKS Connector is a feature that Amazon recently launched where you can visualize any non-EKS cluster in the EKS console, right? And with this you get like a unified view of all of your cluster, whether it is on Google Cloud, whether it is on Azure, or even if it is on your premises itself, right? So yeah, but the only thing is like you can just view and not manage, like you cannot create and delete anything, stuff like that, which we'll see in the demo, right? Now EKS will visualize your own cluster, means there need to be some sort of client on your cluster, right? Which is here on this repo. Now if we go to this repo, it will say it's a client side agent which connects your Kubernetes cluster to the AWS, right? And how it works, fairly simple. This is your EKS service. It uses SSM service as your bridge, and this is your cluster, and this is your client side utility, which is this project. We'll explore in the demo section, and it proxy with impersonate and talk to your API server and gather some information, right? Fairly simple. Now we won't go much into the detail about how the client is, but let's quickly jump into the demo and see how we can solve it, right? For this particular use case, I have a Kubernetes cluster running in the CVO cloud. The name is Surajin Cloud -CVO-1. It's a 3-node cluster, and on the EKS side I already have my EKS cluster up and running, and we will add our CVO cluster. Our goal is to add our CVO cluster here to have a unified view, which we saw in the slide, right? Now to do that, we have to click on add cluster. There are two options. Create means creating the EKS cluster, and registering means utilizing the EKS connector. Okay, so let's click on register, give a unique name. So I'm going to use the same name, which is Surajin Cloud -CVO-1, which I used here. Now under the provider, if you see, there is EKS Anywhere, Anthos, GKE, AKS, OpenShift, and even your self-hosted EC2. Now CO is not in the list, so we'll click on other. Okay, and now next bit is connection configuration. So we saw the bridge was the SSM, right? So we need a IAM role with which it will authenticate to the AWS, right? This client side functionality. Connector users. So I already created a user, so we can check that user. I am user. Oops. Role, it was a role. If you look at EKS connector role, it has a policy and few SSM related permissions. Now you can find this out from the documentation. In the EKS connector documentation, this last section talk about all the required IAM role. That's the IAM role, okay, which I created from that section. So let's select that and click on register cluster. Now once you register, the status you will see is pending, right? And you will see a pop-up saying download this YAML file and apply it to your cluster. So we'll have to download this YAML and apply it to our CVO Kubernetes cluster, right? Now if somehow I miss this and I refresh this page, I'll have to deregister and start the process again. Okay, so let's download this file. Okay, and now if I refresh, okay, it will say that now you cannot download this file, right? So I'll have to deregister and go back again. But also on the same time, it does say that cluster activation date will expire soon. Today is 13 June and it is saying it is expire by 16th June. That means once you register the cluster, that YAML file is valid for 3 days. So you will have to register your cluster within 3 days, or you will have to repeat the process again. Okay. Now currently it's in pending state because we haven't really applied our configuration. Now in the configuration, if you see what it is doing, it is deploying a namespace, some secret, a few roles, and a config map with the SSM configuration, and a stateful set, which is our agent, right? Now let's deploy this on our cluster. Okay, so I have already set up the cluster in my terminal. Let's apply this file which we just downloaded. It created a few things. Okay, now let's go to this EKS connector namespace. Let's look at the pods. My connector pods are up and running. Okay, now if we go back to the console and I refresh it, you will see the status is active. Okay, so because we installed the agent, the status got active, but we don't have any information as such, right? Like we are not able to see even the version, and we got one new error as well. So the error is saying user is forbidden. The service account cannot impersonate the user. Now I'm trying to access this cluster from EKS as this user, right? So somehow this has to impersonate, oh sorry, the vice versa. The service account has to impersonate this user. Okay, now for that we need more IAM permissions and RBAC, sorry, not IAM, RBAC permissions. For that, let's go to second section of the documentation where it says granting access, and first to create and apply EKS connector role. Okay, now I'm not going to read all the documentation, but you can read that later. So we'll need this file, and there are few files which we will see later. Okay, now let's download this file. And if we look at this file, it's a cluster role. Okay, and what it is doing is resource user and verb is impersonate, exactly the error we have seen, and we have to add our IAM on here. So let's add our IAM on here and let's see what happens. Okay, kubectl apply. Okay, so we created a new RBAC with the IAM that we have given, and now let's refresh it and see what happens. Okay, now if you see, the Kubernetes version has appeared and the error has changed. Okay, but we still can't see anything. Now the error is namespace is forbidden, cannot list namespace. That means we were able to impersonate the user and we were able to talk to the API server in this CO cluster. Okay, but now we are not able to list the things, right? Like the nodes, namespace, pod, to visualize things, right? Now to solve this, if you go back to the documentation, the next bit is configuring IAM user to access connected cluster. Now there are two things in it, like you can either give full access or you can give restricted access. Let's say for this user, I want to show only this particular namespace. You can do that as well. But because this is demo, I'm not bothered. So I'm going to give full access. Okay, let's download this file and let's take a look at this file. Okay, so this is a cluster role and we are granting get and list for all the resources such as node namespace pod event, uh, all the deployment daemon set, and the jobs as well. Okay, and again we'll have to give I'm on here in the cluster role binding, which we will copy from here. Let's put it here and let's apply it. kubectl apply, not this. We are giving console dashboard full access. Okay, now the moment of truth, let's refresh it. The error should go away, and now we will see some information. Right now we are able to visualize our CO cluster in the EKS console. Okay, now let's just go to the node here, click on the cluster and see nodes. Okay, so this node is K3S Suraj in cloud and with 2DHPC, which is here. 3GQW, it's here, right? So we can visualize all the nodes. In the resources section, we can visualize pod, deployment, jobs, and the node, of course, and the namespace, right? Like we can, whatever permission we give, we were able to visualize. But the only thing is you will not be able to create, modify, or delete anything. Okay, you can just view things. Now let's look at nodes a little bit deeper. If you click on node, when this EKS connector utility, it fetches the information, you will see it has this raw JSON, right? It's basically the object in the CO Cloud Kubernetes. Now, there is a repo called AWS Container Roadmap where a user can request a new feature in AWS EKS and all the container services. And I saw one of the issue where user requested, can we see this thing in YAML format, which is like more human readable. But for now, we can take a look at the structured view. It's basically based on top of that JSON information itself. For node, you can see the kernel version, you can see the what container runtime there is, you can see the operating system along with architecture and what is the instance type. You can see all the resource allocation, CPU memory pods. You can see all the pods running on that particular node. You can see all the conditions, tents, if there are any labels and annotation and events for that particular node, right? So basically you get a overall view of that particular node, right? Like you get all the information. I don't need to use a kubectl CLI. I can do that pretty much, but without doing that, I'm able to see all this information. Yeah, and also like if you go to resources, right? Like now similar with the namespace as well. If we click on it, we'll see labels, annotation, and similarly we can have like a raw view as well and the structured view along with the events, right? And similarly, if we go to the pod, let's say you want to debug something which is in the CO Cloud, right? And currently you're working on some AWS functionality. So from the connector, you can simply go there and click on one of the pod, look for all the information such as all the configuration, and you can see the events as well. Okay, so for example, the connector is the recent pod. You'll see all the init container information, you can see all the arcs, and usually we utilize events for some debugging and troubleshooting purpose, right? So you can see that here, which is pretty cool. Nice. Now if you go to cluster console, you will be able to see the EKS cluster which was already there and the CO cluster which I added additionally. Okay, now as I said, it says update now for EKS but not from CO, because you cannot manage the cluster, right? So this is how you can manage and view the clusters, which gives us some visibility over the clusters from other providers. Now if you want to, let's say you delete things and like you don't want this cluster anymore, you simply click on it and you click on deregister and it is gone from your console, right? It's that simple. And you delete the things that we deployed on our cluster. Okay, so this is how we have seen how we can visualize all of our cluster in one console, right? And in this particular video we saw a demo where how we can visualize CO cluster on Amazon EKS. So if you are a Amazon EKS user and if you also have a clusters in CO Cloud or GK and EKS, you can like visualize them in the same console, so you'll get a nice view of them. And if you want to troubleshoot something, you can do it as well, right? Now some user might complain, right? Like not really complain, but they might say that, you know, what's the use? Like I cannot do anything on it, then what's the use? So EKS Connector is like fairly recent project, right? And there are more and more enhancements will come to it as well, but eventually there might be an option to do that. But as of now, having a little level of observability and like a unified view, I found it pretty useful. So yeah, I think that's it. If you haven't checked out the other videos of EKS Tells, do check them out in the playlist, which is the link is in the description. And if you like this video, hit the like button and share it with your friends as well. And till then, okay, bye.